When you hear the name Hit Boy, the most recent headline around his name you've probably heard is when he decided to take aim and call out other producers in the game back in March. Ironically, under Alchemist production, and him rapping the following: I'm usually homeboys with producers I get compared to, but on this one, I want to see him stretched out extra legroom. I don't really know, dude. He seemed like a cool cat, but I never once heard Metro Boomin do boom bap. I never heard a Southside beat without an 808 in it. HB in drunk driver mode, I swerve in every lane with it. I F with Mustard, he can make that ratchet stuff with his eyes closed, but now I'm starting to wonder, can I do Chop Soul? I just seen Young Berg spoke on the wave, I should do him like Trick and snatch hit out his name. I had decoded the game, I had the coldest of days. I'm like Debo on his cruiser, how you got no credits without co-producers? This was a friendly jab at a lot of producers, and none of it was a genuine insult, more so competitive spirit. But the most interesting line that I found out of this was, how you got no credits without co-producers. The Grammy nominations released for 2024, and if we check the Producer of the Year category, there are Jack Antonoff, Daniel Negro, D-Mile, Metro Boomin, and Hit Boy. Metro Boomin and Hit Boy both had a big year, with Metro Boomin producing tracks for both Her Loss and his really successful album Heroes and Villains, but in the nominations, Hit Boy has been prolific. As you can see clearly, he's the only producer on here that has 6 albums in one calendar year, 3 with Nas, 2 that he himself rapped over, and 1 with Music Soul Child, with an additional couple of songs that were added under his nomination. To add to that, he's also nominated for Best Rap Album of the Year with King's Disease 3 alongside Nas, having helped Nas get his first ever Grammy win with the original King's Disease, and every installment since being nominated as well.
It's crazy because all 3 King's Diseases have been nominated for Grammys.
That's right.
The first one won, second one didn't win, and now KD3.
Here we go.
We're going to see in February. That would be a blessing. We got to run that. We need 2 W's that night, man. I'm super looking forward to that. I ain't going to lie.
Not only that, but if we pull up Heroes and Villains, for instance, there's a decent amount of co-production. Metro Boomin put together a lot of these beats, but he has had help, which I don't believe there's anything wrong with. And it's not like some producers that have 5 to 8 other producers on a beat. But if we take a look at King's Disease 3, which is in competition with Heroes and Villains for Rap Album of the Year, he was the sole producer on the entire thing. There's an argument that has been brewing in hip-hop for at least the past 2 years, which is that of co-production. Some say, who cares if we have 12 people on a beat? If we made good music, a hit song, then the outcome was great and it fosters collaboration. That is true, and I agree. To an extent. I'm not saying we need to penalize producers for collaborating. However, we definitely need to big up and give props and extra credit for producers, such as Hit Boy for instance, who are producing everything solo, competing on the same level with music quality, and competing in creativity with songs and albums that have well over a dozen producers. That's a testament to the wealth of creativity that a sole producer, in this case Hit Boy, is capable of. Another impressive feat is the fact that these projects he's worked on are all pretty much independent or a small distribution deal. But for the King's Disease albums, it's on Mass Appeal, which is independent. That's Nas' record label. Same thing for the Magic albums. Hit Boy's own albums are distributed through him, and his newest produced one with his dad isn't even available on Spotify, which is a topic for a separate video. So not having access to the mainstream push that major labels afford other producers that he's competing with for the Grammy category, on top of the lack of collaboration, just puts him in the underdog category regardless of how much success he's had in the past and what legacy he's built with the hits he's dropped over the past decade. One thing that hasn't been covered is how Hit Boy assisted Nas in coming into a new prime 26 years after his debut classic Illmatic. Nas lifted Hit Boy into new levels of respect, music-wise, and for an older generation, there's no doubt about that, and the two produce damn near flawless projects together, time and time again. But Nas had a shaky comeback, and people were beginning to discount him in the late 2010s. Nas took a long break from music, releasing albums. He had dropped Life is Good in 2012, but it wouldn't be another 6 years until he released an album. He never said he retired, like a particular rival of his, but he stayed away from music longer than most rappers who claimed retirement. But when he returned in 2018 with Kanye West production on one of the several Good Music 7-track albums that legendary month of June, people were expecting something huge, and unfortunately, it was largely a letdown. Nas himself even said the following: I don't know what went wrong. I like Cop Shot the Kid. I like Adam and Eve. I like the music and Simple Things. It's a short album. We just didn't get enough time. I wish we'd worked on it more. And he was right. there were some good tracks on this, but overall, it fell short. The important thing was that Nas was beginning to experiment with bringing his supreme level rapping ability to the game with more modern production, in this case, assisted by Kanye West. It's tough to come back after 6 years and then have a letdown of an album, with Kanye as well. But that's really a stick or twist moment, and instead of trying to go back to his comfort zone and release the old school boom bap music with those type of beats, or losing his identity and just trying to rap like the new age guys, which we've seen older rappers try to do, he went and found Hit Boy to work on the masterpiece that was the original King's Disease. If I could define this album in the way it affected me most, it would be bridging the gap. I grew up in this transitory phase of hip hop, listening throughout the early 2000s to eventually the 2010s, rappers slowly forgoing lyricism in favor of melodies, flows, and relying a bit more on production. There wasn't much of an expectation for King's Disease. You can't really match the hype of a Kanye West produced Nas album after a 6-year hiatus, and it reflected in the sales. 47,000 first week, debuting at number 5 as opposed to the 77,000 that Nasir did. However, the word of mouth around this album spread quickly, incorporating new age rappers in terms of style like Lil Durk, Don Toliver, Anderson .Paak, and even Fabio Foreign is something we wouldn't expect, and the only other 90s rappers I've seen successfully bring together newer age rappers on an album is Busta Rhymes for his Blockbuster album released this year, and that was 3 years after Hit Boy and Nas did it on King's Disease. Another impressive feat is that King's Disease trilogy progressively got better. The majority of ratings for KD2 were higher than KD1, and KD3 was on par at worst, and potentially better than KD2, which is something we rarely ever see for a trilogy. But it's also quite fascinating to see in real time the chemistry develop between producer and rapper, which is something that we haven't really seen in the modern day like we did many years ago. Think of Kid Cudi and a Plain Pat Emil. A lot of rappers will have an album with a producer, maybe a mixtape too, even come up with them, but once they get popular, really famous, and access to a lot of these producers they didn't have access to when they were coming up in the game, they would switch producers throughout their career, which, to be fair, there's nothing really wrong with that. Some artists want to explore new sounds, and that's one approach, but another approach is perfecting the sculpture of the existing sound the rapper made with that producer, the original one, and seeing it until it's near perfect. And that's something we've been able to witness with Nas, except in a newer generational term, not the original producers that he was with in the late 80s, 90s, at 50 years old. No other rapper at that age has done it like he has, and I believe they're setting a new standard that rappers, regardless of how old they may be, can still have a second wind in their career without sacrificing their identity or being forced to create the same style of music they did decades ago. So not only is Hit Boy kind of foraying into this new world of producers where many of them are collaborating, and he's deciding to, quote unquote, what some people would call, if it was a rapper, having this old head mentality of just wanting to work on his craft on his own. But we wouldn't call a songwriter or a rapper that wanted to rap with his own rhymes somebody that was backwards. And I think this is something that we should see from a couple of more producers and rappers. We haven't really seen producer rappers roll around like usual. We have seen the closest thing to a duo, I believe, in modern age, like let's say 6-7 years ago, was Lil Uzi Vert with his producers. It was one or two at the time that was really helping him take off. And then they ended up having a falling out or just a separating. We also saw that with Pierre and Playboi Carti. However, Playboi Carti, like I said, he's one of those examples of somebody that likes to explore new sounds with each album, which is working for him. So there's really no criticism there. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.